if I may, on new clause 11, for the sake of brevity, which is entitled Tariff-Free Trade in Goods and Services. Of course, there are no tariffs on services worldwide, so that should be fairly easy to achieve. But I take it that it means tariff-free trade in goods and the minimum of barriers to services. There are only two realistic outcomes to the negotiations we will have as far as trade is concerned. The first is that we negotiate a free trade agreement continuing tariff-free trade, more or less what we've got at present. And the second is that we move to trading on the basis of most favoured nation tariffs under what WTO rules, which is basically what America, China, Japan and Russia, the four most successful countries exporting to the EU, do at present. Now, from what I've heard in this House and what I know of the government's position, everybody would like us to negotiate continuing tariff-free trade with our European partners. That's what everybody wants. We don't particularly need any clause in this bill to urge us to try and achieve that. Moreover, it's very simple to negotiate. To go from zero tariffs to zero tariffs is very easy. It can be done in an afternoon. It's not like negotiating the removal of tariffs, as the EU has had to do with Canada, where Canada had 5,000 different tariffs, EU had 12,500 different tariffs, and they have to trade off one against the other. So tariff-free trade is very simple to negotiate. As far as barriers and services are concerned, all we'd have to negotiate is the normal dispute resolution procedure if our regulatory systems began to diverge on assessing whether that was a matter that was serious or not, because we start with identical regulatory arrangements, or will do after the Great Repeal Bill. Now, tariff-free trade is also in the interests of the European Union. We are the biggest single market for the rest of the European Union, bigger than the United States, with whom they've laboriously been trying to negotiate the removal of tariffs over some years. They also have a big surplus in trade with us. And it should not, therefore, be difficult for them. I mean, it's very much in their interests, and they already have free trade agreements with some 50 other countries which don't involve free movement of labour or paying a contribution or accessing continuing to accept a European legislation. So it's in their interests, and they've demonstrated it's the sort of thing they can do with countries where they want free trade. But it may be that within the EU, politics will trump economics. That though it's in their economic interest to continue with tariff-free trade with us, they may feel it necessary to punish us, to deter other countries from following our example, and to deter their voters from voting for Eurosceptic parties. That we have to recognise in this House, and too few people seem willing to recognise, will be their choice. They will either decide to go along with continuing free trade, or they will say, no, for political reasons we can't accept that, we must trade on most favoured nation terms in future. We can't negotiate, go back to them and say, oh, sorry, you didn't give it to us first time, the House will vote against it, give it to us the second time. If they didn't give it to the first time, they won't. But what we need to recognise is that although trading on most favoured nation terms is not as good as continuing free trade, it's a second best. It's second best, and it's better than continuing on the arrangement we had in the past. First of all, most favoured nation tariffs, as they will apply to us, if we are subject to the common external tariff that Europe applies, if they apply it to us, would average 4%. The net contribution we make to the European Union annually is equivalent to 7% of the value of our exports. So we're currently paying 7%. to avoid a charge of 4%. The 7% is after taking account of everything we get back. If the honourable gentleman wants to know, look up page 159, chart 4.27 of the Office of Budget Responsibility, which spelt out how much we will get back net when we leave, and it's £13 billion, £250 million a week. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the right honourable for giving way. One possibility, is it not, if there was a 4% tariff imposed, that the pound might just depreciate by the same amount because we have our own currency?
Well, but it's already 15% more competitive than it was a year ago, which rather dwarfs an average 4% thing. We can, of course, give processing relief. I omit all tariffs on components coming as part of processing chains and manufacturing chains, which are going to be re-exported. We will get £12.3 billion of revenues if we apply the common external tariff to imports from the EU. Our exporters will pay some £6.5 billion of tariffs on their exports to the EU. So we would have ample money to compensate any exporters who were not sufficiently benefited by a 15% devaluation and still have billions of pounds to reduce general taxation. And, of course, we can negotiate free trade agreements with the rest of the world, and we can slash unilaterally the tariffs that we currently charge on products, food and clothing and other things which we do not produce, but which mean that our consumers have to pay higher prices to subsidise inefficient producers elsewhere in the EU instead of importing, say, from less developed countries who we should naturally be importing for. There are many other advantages, Madam Chairman, but as you've urged brevity, I will not tell the House what they are and hold them up for a future occasion.